Hello, everyone. My name is Sunil. And this is Barnaby.
Hi.
I'm a product manager on the voice team. Barnaby is
Software
engineers, our technology leader on the team. We're here to talk to you about what Google does with voice. And one of the interesting things, at least with this conference, at least I've noticed, is so many of the talks that came prior to this mention voice. In the keynote yesterday, you heard about voice in things like Brillo, and even this morning we heard about how voice is going to be used, or how voice is used in Android Wear and in Android Auto. And we wanted to use this time as an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what Google does with voice, its capabilities, and also mention a little bit about what are some of the developer-facing tools that we have where you can use Google's voice capability to build products on this. So, as we're going through this talk, we'll give an overview of what we can do, but I'd love for you to keep in mind about what are the things that you are building, or what are the things that you envision, how you envision voice. And at the end, either now or we have office hours afterward as well, we'd love to hear from you about what are some of the things that you would love to do with voice as well. So with that, let me get into it and show you a little bit. You might have seen this already, okay? But this is some of the things we can do.
With your legs.
It's not going to fit up the stairs.
When we have volume.
What time does Goodwill close?
Goodwill is open until 9 p.m.
Let's start that.
With your legs.
It's not going to fit up the stairs.
What time does Goodwill close?
Goodwill is open until 9 p.m.
Show me a moving company nearby.
Moving company within 6 miles.
How do I get to 3221 Carter Ave?
226 High Street.
Here are your directions.
When does my package arrive?
Your most recent order has shipped.
Thank you.
Setting new home address.
Text Mom. I really like it here.
Set a timer for 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes. Starting.
All right, that's how much time I have so that we have time for questions at the end. So let me back up a bit before I talk about voice. Well, let's go back to our original mission here. We were founded to connect users to information. And so doing this and it started with web searching. You go to a desktop browser, you type in a query and get to a particular destination. But nowadays, as we're seeing more and more emerging devices and mobility is becoming increasingly important, that the ways that users are wanting to interface with their technology is changing. And so this is why voice is an example of something that's important to us and why it's important to Google to invest in this area to provide new ways for people to interface with their devices. So we get a lot of traffic and huge amounts of traffic. And the other thing that's happening over time is more and more of this thing is becoming mobile. Again, we started with desktop, but there's countries like US and Japan where the majority of the traffic is coming in on our mobile devices, and that trend is continuing. So again, more and more reason for us to find ways to give users the way to express what they want, use Google as the conduit to get to places. And in many times, the destination of these are things that you build, websites that you have, information that you provide, services that you provide. And so having a much more seamless experience where a user wants to ask for something and get to that destination and get to that answer is one of our goals here. So now let's talk a little bit about voice. We did a little study, just a little survey a little while ago, and we learned some things about how people are using voice and who is using voice. So for example, one of the things we found are teens are using voice more than adults. And so not only are we seeing more and more applications embracing voice, we're seeing that the younger generation are using more and more voice in the types of things that they're doing with technology. So when we drill into this, what are people doing with this, with voice? So we see a little bit of difference between teens and adults. Asking for directions is common, but teens are using it to help with their homework. If any of you have children, I know my children, they ask their technology for questions like, who was the president at a particular time, or things like that. So we're seeing more and more examples of the younger generation using this. For messaging, however, adults are using voice a little bit more. So, variety of ways where we see voice is increasingly used for a number of purposes, and also the difference between the ages. So when are people using voice search? And so there's a number of interesting things here about where this is taking place and some difference between teens and adults also. But the one thing here that kind of stood out to us is this thing in the bathroom. Okay, so we don't know why exactly, and I've asked some people. I'm certainly, like, if any of you have ideas about this, if you're using voice technologies, doesn't have to be ours in the bathroom. I'd love to hear a little bit more about it, but some people have described things like, yeah, you got? How do you know they're in the bathroom? That's a great question, and I have a very uncreepy answer to this. We asked them. So hopefully I'm not violating any confidentiality. Say we do not have a technology that detects when people are in the bathroom. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Who are more honest groups between teens and
we're going to repeat this and update this survey. I'll make sure we come up with some way of metricing the honesty on this one. But yes, there are things. The bathroom seems to be an important place for voice. So here's where we have the idea section here. What do people want to use voice for? Pizza, finding the remote, and finding the keys. So, and this might give some interesting product ideas for any of you, which is the ability to order a pizza while you're in the bathroom. So, this is the direction voice may be going. I don't know, but hopefully it'll inspire some great minds out there. And hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll see we have some of the tools necessary to build some of these things. And hopefully maybe somebody in this audience will take up one of these tasks of building a product like this. So that's how people are using voice. Now let me pause for a moment here and talk about something that we at Google have built out over the years that helped enable some of this. And this is what's called the knowledge graph. Now, this technology isn't just for voice. It's applied for a number of different projects within Google, but voice is one of the beneficiaries of it. So what is the knowledge graph? This is a technology that has information about things and their relationships between things. So for example, we know the Eiffel Tower is a building, it's a structure. And there are other structures that might be related to the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower has some properties like its height and its location. So knowing that the Eiffel Tower isn't just a sequence of characters, but is a thing and it has these other properties, help us figure out when we hear a query, what is the intent of it and what is the relationship of that piece of information to other things out there. So let me give you an example that illustrates what the benefit of knowledge graph is and how it connects to voice. So suppose I gave this query: who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Well, hopefully it's not too unknown. It's Thomas Jefferson. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, among others, by the way. Now, a voice query like this: how old was he when he died? Now, I didn't say how old was Thomas Jefferson when he died. How old was he when he died? Well, if we did something like this, well, we would get Thomas Jefferson died when he was 83, and then we see these other bits of information, for example, other presidents. So this is where the knowledge graph came in and knew that Thomas Jefferson was a president. There's some information, some metadata information about him, and there's a relationship to these other people that are listed here, and including Ben Franklin, who was not a president here. So those relationships are encoded within the knowledge graph. Okay, so now let's continue this a little bit. On what day did he die? So does anybody know what day Thomas Jefferson died? Or where I'm going with this? July 4th, there we go. So July 4th, 1826, that's when Thomas Jefferson died. And again, I didn't say what day did Thomas Jefferson die, what day did he die? And this gets into how people want to speak naturally. When we speak, we don't reformulate every detail of every query and resolve all the pronouns, etc. We want to be able to speak naturally. And the Google engine is capable of these things. Now, these may be things you haven't tried as much as some of your other queries, but that capability is there, and I wanted to illustrate this as the kind of engine that we are working with, and the world-class capability that's underlying some of our technology here. Okay, well, I got another trivia here a bit for you. How about John Adams? Does anybody know this? Same day, exactly. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on exactly the same day, July 4th. So interesting bit of trivia here. So hopefully that may be the one thing you take away from this. I hope it's not, but as many of you have done presentations, sometimes that's the way it goes. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So that is what the knowledge graph gave as part of this thing, as part of our underlying technology here. Let me take a moment to pause say a little bit more about our speech capabilities here. Now, at I/O of this year, Sundar Pichai, our CEO, announced that he gave some information, some statistics about how our speech recognition technology has improved. So the word error rate, one of the metrics we use to determine how well a speech recognition engine works, like how many errors you get per, say, 100 words, it has improved from 20% to 8%. At the time of I/O, that's what we reported. That level, now we're getting into a technology that can really be used in a greater number of circumstances. If any of you who have done any, either playing in the speech field or working in the speech field, even decades ago, it was relegated to certain niche areas, or for certain, fun things, you can get a little program on your computer, talk to it a little bit, but it was still hard to use. Nowadays, with this level of performance, we can really build valuable products out of this. And that's another area that Google has invested a lot in. But it's not just our word error rate that's improved over the years. We've also increased the number of languages that we support. Over 20 languages, in fact, we can handle with speech at this point. And so, it's becoming much more widely accessible. Back in the days, you'd have to do training of these things. That isn't the case anymore. Lots of advancements in speech, and now it's at the time where you can actually build valuable products off. Now, in a moment, Barnaby's going to be talking a little bit about our developer program and our APIs and how those work, so you can get a sense as to how people can build off of these things, and examples of developers who have built some things. Before we do that, let me just give you a last little bit of overview of how some of this works. So, typically, they speak into the Google microphone, and in this case, it's on an Android phone. They speak into that. We do the speech to text. We also have a natural language processing capability that interprets what that query was. What does it mean? What is the user trying to do? And we use the knowledge graph to help figure out and resolve these questions of what are the things that the user is asking for. And in some cases, this thing goes back to Google and we show results. Like in the case of the Thomas Jefferson example, that was Google that was the one providing the answer. But now what if you have the answer, or your service is the one that can produce a result here? This is the next part of the talk that we're getting into. How do you inform Google about your capabilities so that you can be the one that gives the answer? I want to give one last bit here before I pass the mic. For a while we've had, and what I want to get into is there's speech recognition and there's the interpretation of the speech. We've had the Android speech recognition API for some time now. And what this does is it allows you, on an Android device, you start the speech recognizer, and then you say, just report back to me what was said. Here, that's essentially like a transcript. Here are the words that the user says. It says little about the interpretation of what those words are or what should be done as a result of those words. So this is the first API that's been around. And over the past year or so, we've been introducing new APIs that allow it to do much more. Let me pass it to Barnaby.
Hi. So we've been adding steadily voice action APIs that let you extend what the assistant is able to do by completing the actions inside of your Android apps. So this kind of breaks down into three different areas: system actions, custom actions, and the voice interaction API. And I'll be talking about all three. So system voice actions are sort of standard set of common cases things that people want to do with their phones, and Google defines the grammars and then defines an API that we will call out to your app to let you actually complete the action. Here's an example of someone playing music, but it could be things like setting an alarm, other sort of common use cases. Here's a set of examples. There's actually more than this, but fitness, media, communications, messaging, things like that, search within an app. So how do you implement one of these? So for some cases, it's actually really, really easy. In-app search is one where we tried to make it as easy as possible. If you use the Android search widget, you're pretty much just have to add that one line, or 4 lines, I guess, to your activity intent filter that says, I can handle the special kind of search that comes from the Android, the Google Search Assistant. And what happens when you do that is, when you say, OK, Google, search for hotels in Maui on TripAdvisor, we do all the natural language understanding and then different ways that you may phrase that query and express it as an action that you want to take semantically, and then a set of parameters, in this case, a query, hotels in Maui, and the app that we're going to target that intent to. Similarly, if you say play music, maybe say play classical music, maybe say play a specific song or artist, natural language understanding figures out what specific artist it was, no matter how the user phrases it. And you get this common command that expresses what the user's intention was, and then a set of extras that describe more of the parameters. So in this case, it's a genre, it's classical, and the query was classical music. If it was an artist, we would have a way of telling you the specific song or specific artist that it was actually referring to. But sometimes the sort of common use cases are not going to cover what you want to do in your app. You may have something that's special to your app, or the way that you want to say it is going to be specific to your application terminology. So we started this program called Custom Voice Actions, in which you can work with Google to define actions that are available in your specific app and nobody else's. So here's an example: show me restaurants nearby on TripAdvisor. And the way this sort of works is, you provide as examples of the way that you want to, the action that you want to do. So I might say start my car, but there's multiple different parameter types: Google car, driverless car, self-driving car. And then we use the Google natural language understanding to sort of generalize the ways that people might say that. So please start my car, warm up my Google car, or start the driverless car, and make it a more general thing that's going to be able to trigger in more cases than if we just use the one example that you give us. So about, well, more than 1,000 apps have implemented these kind of voice actions, from media to in-app search, and we recently did a integration with a bunch of messaging apps. So WhatsApps and apps like that are now able to do, like, the message is actually sent in WhatsApp versus just sending it through SMS. Okay, so in Android M, we added a new API called Voice Interaction API. And the idea here is everything I've talked about thus far just gets you into your app, and kind of at that point, the voice experience stops from your perspective. So we go into your app, but you don't have any way of interacting with the user through their voice. And in a lot of cases, you're either going to just complete the action, or you're just going to show the UI, a touch UI, that you're expecting the user to interact with. So the Voice Interaction API lets you know that an action was triggered by the user's voice, ask back and forth questions to clarify what it was they meant, and then tell the user what it was they actually did. And you're able to do all of this with the screen off. So to follow on Sunil's example, we've all been there. You're in the bathtub and you want to turn on the alarm in your house. So custom voice actions, you're able to trigger that intent. But maybe you have multiple modes that you can trigger in your house. For example, there's a way mode where you're actually not at home, but you're in the bathtub, so you just want it to be like, don't turn on the internal sensors, and it's sort of like just turn on the external door sensors. So you need to ask a question to do that. So the Scout app implements this activity, but if you're triggering it as a voice interaction, you're able to ask a question: what mode of alarm do you want to set? And then there's a bunch of options, and they said away mode. Now it can tell us, okay, I'm arming away. And so now, even if you can't see your phone, you know that it actually completed that action for you. So let's see a demo of this. I'm going to reset.
Away. Turn on Scout alarm.
Please select which mode to arm. Which mode?
Away.
Arming away.
So in that case, you are in the Scout alarm app, and you're actually having dialogue with the user, and it pretty much just looks like the Scout alarm app, but there's this plate at the bottom called the voice plate. So the idea is, the assistant and your application are sort of sharing the screen. The bit at the bottom where this microphone appears is where the Google Assistant is able to do dialogue and show the user like what the speech recognition results are. But the top part of it is actually your application running as it normally would. And you're able to use this to now control the UI through your voice versus just doing it through touch interaction. So how does this work? Is it a lot of work? Mostly not. So you start with a voice activity, or maybe it's just in the Scout example, it's actually just the activity that a normal app uses, and they added the voice experience onto it. So you add this category to your intent filter that says, hey, if I'm triggered by voice, then we'll trigger you in some special way. And you just advertise that you're able to handle this kind of interaction. Then you have a sort of standard Android activity. You make this call to is voice interaction route that tells you whether or not it's a voice interaction. And if it is, you run it in a slightly different way. Maybe if it's not, you run it just as a regular touch activity. So what is this? What kind of questions can I ask? So this is a confirmation question. So like, are you sure you want to do this? Which is a pretty common case. Like if it's something that like maybe we misinterpreted what they said or the speech recognition was slightly off, you want to make sure like, are you sure we're going to actually do this? So you get this voice interactor and you say, I want to make a new confirmation question. Are you sure? And then you specify what should happen if they are in fact sure. So this flag will say whether or not it was confirmed or not. Remember, you don't have to do the speech recognition, you don't have to do the natural language understanding. So we'll understand all the sort of common ways people say, are you sure? Yes, okay, make it so. All these things will actually cause it to trigger. Another common thing we will want to do is pick an option. This is what the Scout app did. So say we want to pick what kind of pet you want to use for something. So you specify all of the options. You give dog, cats, fish, and maybe you can specify synonyms on these as well. We'll do some amount of matching to the options, so what the user said, to actually make sure that we pick one of the options that they're available. But if it's really ambiguous, we'll re-prompt the user and say, we're not sure what you meant in that case. Then you just say, what kind of pet is the question I want to ask, and then these are the options that I want to use. And then finally, it says what happens when it picks one of those options, and that's when you implement the code to say, okay, a pet was selected. This is probably almost exactly the same code as if somebody touched that option in the list view with their finger. So we talked about pick option requests and confirmation requests, picking from a list or confirming an action. There's also another available thing in the API called command requests. This is a extension that lets us add different kinds of questions. So the idea is we'll grow the set of questions that you can ask over time. Things like maybe ask for a date or pick a location or something like that. And then there's a set of options here which you call informing the user. So when you complete something in the Scout app, it told us, yes, I set the alarm to away mode. You want to tell the user by voice, because they started the interaction with voice, that yes, I was actually able to complete that, so they know that it's actually done. If you're just silent and nothing happens, how is the user going to know what happened? And then even more important, if you're not able to complete the action, tell the user why it is. Maybe you're offline and you're not able to complete it. Maybe you don't have the account set up. But we want the user to know this didn't happen and now I understand why. And maybe you could ask follow-on questions, but maybe it's something where they're going to have to actually like touch the screen to do it. So again, just to review, these are the three kinds of interactions you can have. System actions for common things, custom actions where we let you define the grammar, and then voice interaction lets you keep that conversation going into your app. Okay, so I think we have some time for questions since the beeper just went off. And just to reiterate, we're going to be doing office hours at 2:30 in the costume shop, which I didn't know where this was, so I'll tell you, if you go out the front of the building and you turn right on Market Street, there's a vacant lot, and then the building right next to that is the costume shop where they have code labs, and we'll be doing office hours.
Yep.
So the Google speech engine is able to resolve find ontology granularity using the example when I say, find me a driverless car versus find me a self-driving car. There are two.
They're synonyms.
That doesn't require a driver.
Yeah. So
Should I code that myself?
in the example here, yeah. So the question was, looking back to the example, will Google be able to, I believe, determine that a self-driving car and a driverless car are the same thing and automatically, figure all that out? In the example we gave there, we showed that the developer provides the various common ways of describing the same concept. Now, in some cases, Google can figure out alternate ways of saying those things. Developers won't have a lot of transparency into knowing what exactly those are. So in many cases, we ask people to tell us, just give us some of the common examples that, that make sense, that you know about as synonymous ways of saying the same thing. And then it's a better product for the end users if that's the case. I think I saw over there.
How does Google filter out extraneous words?
How does Google?
So for example, I have a friend that really enjoys testing Google. He's like, okay, Google, please find me this. Thank you very much. I love you. He gives it a very long string. How does it actually filter out to calculate what's important?
Okay, so the question is, how do we make Google accommodate the politeness of our users and verbosity? The specific techniques is beyond the scope of what I have time to cover, and probably I can't describe all the techniques anyway. I can say, yes, there are capabilities, like we gave an example where using the word please and some other niceties or adding articles. Those are some of the things that are common there. Now, if your friend has run into some cool examples where we're failing, let us know. We want to hear about this stuff because that's what people do, right? And it should have the right outcome. So, I think I saw there next.
Is this still invitation-only program? Anyone develop voice actions program?
So the question was, is this an invitation-only program? What you saw there, Barnaby outlined 3 APIs: System Actions, Custom Actions, Voice Interaction API. System Actions are totally open. Voice Interaction API is completely open. These are documented publicly on our website. Custom Actions, that is something that right now our waiting list is a bit long, and we've gotten a lot of requests. So if you want to do Custom Actions, please come talk to me afterward, and then we can get you, get you on the wait list for this.
Okay,
Over
last
here.
question, I think.
Do you have anything in place to help people who are building endangered language translators and speech solutions? Because we don't have speech engines for them. Anything in place at all to help?
Okay, so do we have anything to help with endangered languages? So our team doesn't work on that specific thing, but if there's, maybe that's something you can come talk to us at office hours. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you're looking for. And then even if, our team can't help you, then we can try to redirect the question to the right place. Are we out of time? Yes, we are out of time. We have office hours at the costume shop? Costume shop. We'll be there for the next hour. Please come over there. We'll be happy to, I know lots of you had questions. Please come there. We'd be happy to answer your questions there. Thank you.